I'll just say it's stuff like that when
Yeah.
you're an artist and
Hmm.
you see that what you're doing has an effect in the world. It has consequences. It's not just some pretty bunch of stuff on paper that you can look at and forget about 2 minutes later. It's
Hmm.
when you start to see that your art, that your creation actually has a place in the world, and it affects other people.
Hmm.
That's
It
a
does.
wonderful.
It
It does.
does.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it is. Hello and welcome to the HERshyt show where we talk about people, places, and things. Welcome to this week's The HERshyt show where I have the honor and privilege of speaking with Max and Kelley from Creators Active. Creator, Creatives Active Lab, Actors
There you go.
Lab. I can't even get it out right. Goodness gracious.
That's all right.
I'm sorry. But
It's
Miss
fine.
Kelley and Mr. Max, go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody and tell us about what you do at the Creative Actors Lab.
There you go. Got it perfectly.
There we go.
Do you want to go
Yeah,
first? Okay. Hi, Kelley Cody-Grimm. I am one of the acting coaches with Creative Actors Lab. And what we do is we just want to have people open themselves up to being more creative. We do that through our subscription website, which has a ton of videos on how to do sides, voice work, and things like that. And then we also do bi-monthly table reads with different scripts and things like that, whether they're original scripts or they may be our scripts. And then from there, we just also do screenwriting classes. So just all kinds of fun stuff like that. My background has mostly been in improvisational theater and also film. I'm also an award-winning screenwriter. And that's what I really love to do. Let's let other people kind of explore screenwriting, writing, and just touch that creativity. So that's sort of my role there.
Okay, my turn.
Your turn.
My name is Max Grimm. What don't I do? No,
Very true.
I will say this, for the horrible thing that COVID was,
Yes.
I'm very grateful that I got involved with Acting Out Studios, and everything was on Zoom at the time. We're all on lockdown, and I think over the course of time we got to, or just at least when for as long as I was able to participate in it, we had about 600 students online from all over the place, people I never would have met otherwise. And I'm very grateful for that. I mean, it's a very humbling thing because you start looking at the people that you're teaching, and all of a sudden you see light bulbs go up in the top of their head, and it's like the best feeling in the world. And and you start to sit there after a while and go, I think I might be learning more from the students than they're getting from me, and that's very humbling.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I've done many things. I am a chef amongst other things. But I was a theater trained actor for about 16 years. Did all kinds of productions. I have all the war stories and the scars to prove it, and all of that. But I've just come to where I really love teaching. I really love directing, and I would like to see Creative Actors Lab basically just kind of evolve. I'd like to start producing things, but I produced theater before, and I know what that entails. And I've kind of been down that road, and I know all the stuff that could potentially go wrong. And so now at my being older and hopefully wiser, that when the moment is right to start actually producing physical productions again, that I do so with a greater amount of wisdom and experience. But that's something I really want to see that for Creative Actors Lab. I think there's so much that can still potentially happen with that because it's creative, and creativity and art should evolve.
Now you're
And
also an
stuck in one
artist,
place.
so I've seen some of
I
your
am.
work online.
And by the way, thank you so much for the likes and the
Yeah.
lovely commentary. I thank you, because being a painter is like it can be such a solitary sort of experience.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do start putting stuff out there and then you get people reacting to it and all of that, that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. In fact, I'm going through a thing right now of cataloging all of my art over the
Okay.
years. And it's like, I'm just sitting here going, did I do this about 20 years ago? And I actually found, just to say, I found a painting that I did, was experimenting with watercolor techniques, to where you get a big piece of paper and then you put down some like really blobby, liquidy watercolor. Then you take a straw and start blowing the liquid around and making these intricate designs and everything like that. And I found this one. I did remember our cat at the time, Sunny, was so taken with this. I've actually got pictures of like I've got the thing on the floor and I'm on my hands and knees blowing the paint around with a straw, and he's just sitting there going, Dad, what do you do? And he knew not to put his paws on, he knew not to walk across it. But on the couple of days that I was working on that thing, he would just kind of get out there and just kind of sit and just get mesmerized with the paint going all over the place. And I found this thing the other night and I brought upstairs. I'm going, honey, look what I found. And one of our cats now just like saw it and went, what is that? And he's just like staring at it like with his big eyes and everything. And he's like, touching with the foot and everything. And I'm just like, your grandfather did me with this, don't you? But it was just, I'll just say it's stuff like that when you're an artist and you see that what you're doing has an effect in the world. It has consequences. It's not just some pretty bunch of stuff on paper that you can look at and forget about 2 minutes later. It's when you start to see that your art, that your creation actually has a place in the world and it affects other people. That's wonderful.
It does.
Yeah.
And it is awesome. And I will always share your stuff. So how did you get with, I know it's 541 Productions now, because that's how we met. You were one of my improv coaches, well, the only improv coach that I had during the time of being in the school for acting out studios, previous acting out studios, now 541 Productions. How long did you work for them, or how long have you been on their team as the improv?
Pre-COVID.
We I
2018 maybe?
Yeah, 2018. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I started with him, Lance. Tell
how you met. How you met Lance?
I actually happened.
This is so random.
Yeah, I happened to just see an ad for auditions and classes, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's just right down the street in Duluth, because usually everything's in Atlanta. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, okay, this is like right down the street. So let me go and check it out. And I brought my daughter Amber with me. And so he had some improv stuff that he wanted people to do. And of course, improv was my thing. So I just got up there and, got silly and went with it and worked with some less experienced people and did the yes and supported their choices. And then when I finished, he's like, you've done this before. And I'm like, oh yeah, I've been doing improv for a couple of decades now. I teach it. And he's like, oh, great. We're really looking. And at that point, his company was under another name. No, I think it was under Acting Out Studios. Then he went to 21st Century Entertainment and was working out of there. And then we were doing premieres out of there. And then at the point that COVID hit, he decided to move to Texas. And then that's his family was and that's really where Acting Out Studios became Acting Out Studios. At that point, he kind of resurrected it. And then, and then we were just teaching out of there. So 2020, again, that was when everybody thought it was going to be the roaring 20s and so much fun, but no. And so, it was interesting because rather than having people, because we'd have people come to Norcross and they were driving from Birmingham. And it was like, a 2.5 hour drive to take a 2 hour class, then turn right around and drive another 2.5 hours back. So really Zoom made sense because when you are coaching people, particularly on demo reels, this is pretty much your frame. Yeah. So to sit there and coach people on that, coaching improv, because I hadn't done improv online, I did a little bit more research, found some exercises that you could certainly do online. And so that's really, and then, I wanted to bring Max into it more.
Yeah, well, it was funny, with that, because I really had no intention of becoming involved in this. I really, honestly, I had not touched acting in well over 20 years.
Oh,
I've been doing a
wow.
bunch of other things. Yeah, I just, particularly, once we moved up here to Atlanta, and I mean, I went through theater in Miami, Florida, during the 1980s. Let me tell you, it was, it could turn into a real,
Cluster cuss.
it could turn into a real party down
I'll
there.
say it for you. It was a clusterfuck. I'll say it.
Okay, not to go off on, not become tangential here, but I was doing theater in Miami, Florida during the 1980s. Drugs were rampant. Cocaine was everywhere, and I mean, I had my day with all that stuff when I was very, very much younger, and I just came to a point of like, I don't want to be around all the drugs. I'm just, if y'all want to have a glass of wine and smoke a joint, go right ahead, be my guest. But this other stuff is like, no.
Yeah.
And I got to a point where I was getting a really bad taste in my mouth, not about the art itself, but with the kind of the crowd I was having to work with.
The community,
and I was just,
the area you were in.
Yeah, it was, I mean, I saw some people do some really dumb things. Miami Vice, of course, was going on down there. And that was an experience to be on that show at any point. It was always something weird. But so anyway, I got to a point where I was kind of like, I'm going to go do other art. So I'm going to paint, I'm going to do photography. I cook a lot. And then just, raising kids and all that sort of a thing. And so she met Lance. She'd been working with him for a while. And then they said, then I don't remember, but I got on some call with she and Lance, and I just started talking about things that I had done before and, what I think about this and that. And he said something to me like, I'd like to bring you on as a teacher. And I went, excuse me?
That's not what this phone call was about.
I mean, I wasn't looking to do this at all. And I went, okay. Because I had taught drama before, but, many, many years ago. I had taught, I had 7th and 9th grade for a while, gifted students. That's a whole other,
Okay.
I taught gifted, and I've worked with autism level 1. Honestly, the autism kids are much easier to work with, to be honest. I love them all, but you're going to get challenged. But anyway, but teaching is one of those things I've always loved it. But you got to know your subject. You got to know what you're talking about. You can't just regurgitate a bunch of rote memorization of stuff. That doesn't help anybody. But so I started sitting in on these classes, and I would go, oh, there's an acting exercise we used to do, and then there's this other acting exercise, so we can take components 1 and 2 from this exercise, and then components 3 and 4 from this, and then glue them together and let people, because the whole thing of teaching all these people on Zoom was kind of like, I've never really done this before, so let's just kind of figure it out here. Let's just kind of experiment, see what works, and see what sticks to the wall and what doesn't. And and you just started seeing these people, and it's like they're getting it. And you see people who come into this, and they were so reticent, or they had these particular, very preconceived ideas about what acting is and what it isn't.
Of course. Everybody thinks they know.
Especially when you hear a couple of people talk about, I'm a method actor. Well, what does that mean exactly? Well, I
read 3 chapters of An Actor Prepares, and I know it. I just know it.
I signed up for acting out studios on accident. So I didn't come in with any preconceptions. I was like, when I got the call back, I was excited, but I was also nervous because, I I went through the audition with my mentality of I need to know what people go through for an audition, because eventually I want my own studio where I'm sitting out in the audience, and I want to be able to have people come on. How am I going to do the auditions? But I need to go through it myself to see how it goes. I never expected a callback. So when I got the callback, I was like, hey, I'm in there. And then I got to meet Kelley, and Kelley actually wrote our scripts.
Yeah.
People that don't know, she wrote our scripts. All she did was ask us for how tall are we? Send me a picture of you. And pretty much the attitude kind of deal, like what would be more fitting, the drama, the comedy, the com-dram, something. Pick one of these. And when she got my personality on point with my demo reel, like on point, and she writes so smoothly, and the characters stand out. And I also do the table reads when I'm able to. So she does offer, they both offer things that keep you in the moment of acting. Now I've learned a lot of things from Lance, and now it is 541 Productions. But Creative Actors Lab is today. This is what we are really going to focus on. Like, I did not know that you had your own business until I was your student. And then we had an offline discussion, and then we talked about the podcast, and then you launched a podcast like quickly. So you already have all the materials. You just needed to bring them together. You already have the YouTube channel. You already had your .com. You already have your email. You already had everything there. It was just honing it in and bringing it together with your talents between script writing and Brandon. I hate to throw you out here on this, but Brandon has phenomenally grown, and I know y'all have became real good friends.
He has. He really has.
The script writing classes, like, when does that take place, and how can people sign up for it? Because I know a lot of people with a lot of good ideas, but they don't know how to put it on paper. So how would they get in contact with you?
Excuse me. Okay, there we go. Yeah, your sound editor is going to go, really? As somebody who sound edits our podcast, so I have to cut a lot of that out. They take place right now Wednesday nights. I may also move them and have them be Saturdays. So like right now, they're Wednesday nights. They go for an hour and a half, and basically wherever you are in your writing journey. So if you've got a log line, if you have just an idea and you're like, okay, how do I put this together as a log line, which is kind of like the industry standard, that's like 25 to 35 words. That just describes what your project is. So we can start with a log line. Then I like to look at the Save the Cat beat sheets, and that Save the Cat writes a screenplay. There's also Save the Cat writes a novel, and it just breaks down your screenplay into different acts, whether it's, if you're writing for TV, you usually have 5 acts. Interestingly enough, if it's a screenplay, it's 3 acts. The reason TV scripts are 5 acts is because then you have the commercial breaks, which you don't generally have in a regular screenplay. So we look at, what is, the moment where the character really, the all is lost moment. And in any script, there's usually even a comedy, like in something like Home Alone or Elf, the all is lost moment is when Kevin thinks his family's never coming home. In Elf, it's when Buddy thinks no one has Christmas cheer anymore and he can't help Santa anymore. So even if it's a comedy, you've got to have that all is lost moment. You have to have a protagonist that's got to change, or it has to be the catalyst to have other characters change. So, we just look at that. And sometimes it's as much as just write a monologue for your character. Journal as your character. And then from there, start putting together the plot elements. And then that ultimately can help you create what you need to create. So that's what we want to do. Yeah, Brandon actually just finished his first full-length screenplay. He's been coming and, doing bits and pieces, and he submitted it to Coverfly and got some feedback. I think he's even submitted it to a contest. And I'm like, hey, it's all a process, because most people that write, right now I'm working on a screenplay. I'm on my 4th draft, and it's still, I know for me, it's still not quite there, and that's okay. And when I submit it to my screenplay critique group, they give me feedback. So, that's what I tell people is, it's not going to be perfect right out. Yeah. It's going to be, particularly if you're a writer, it's a lot of word vomit. And that is just cleaning up all that word vomit and getting it to seem like something that's, but that's okay. That for any writer, whether you're a novel writer or you're a screenwriter, poetry, anything like that, that first draft is a mess. But once you get it done, it's not nearly as daunting as looking at a blank page. Because I think any writer, when you're sitting there going, what do I do next? Like I'm working on an action screenplay now, and Max gave me a great suggestion because I don't usually write that much action, but he's like, storyboard it out. And usually you storyboard when you're filming, but I'm like, that's a really good suggestion.
Yeah.
Let me storyboard this out, and then I'm able to describe what's happening and figure out where all the pieces are going, because I'm right on that third act of this is a full movie screenplay. And I've just been struggling with it. Now that he's done that, I'm like, oh, all these ideas are coming because I'm drawing them out rather than writing them out.
Yeah, well, I just, because I've been around your writing for a minute now. And there's just been times over the course of time that I've been reading the various things that she's come out with, but particularly scripts. And it's like, I'm getting it, but I feel like I need some visuals. I need some pictures in this just to help clarify the idea. And there was one, because like sometimes she'll write something and it's like the literal walls are falling down. And the words, I'm getting it through the words, but it would be so much clearer if I could see a picture of it. And how you in your head visualize this, and they can be stick figures. I don't that's fine, but I feel like it would help me to understand better, but I think it would help to clarify in her storytelling process.
Yeah, because I'm sorry.
I think to answer your question though, creativeactorslab.com, right? If you want to contact us, we're on Instagram, Creative Actors Lab, all one words kind of smushed together. So if you want to contact us, there it is.
So there is a difference between novel writing and script writing, and a lot of people
big time.
Yeah.
They don't, because when you're novel writing, I'm the writer that does the novel aspect, right? Not more so the script writing. You're not putting as much as the visual or having them in the screenplay aspect. The novel, you have to, what are you smelling? What are you tasting? What are you seeing? What are you feeling? In your screenplay, this is your lines. Outcut, an interior building XYZ, but you're not going to have that 4-page. And I've noticed, I learned that just by going to your classes, because I didn't realize that screenplay was a lot shorter. So I do understand. That makes me understand what Max was saying as far as putting the visual to it, because in a novel, you have the visual. In a screenplay, you don't really have the visual. It's a building, it's interior, it's the car, but what kind, what is, what color, how are you envisioning your screenplay? So I could see that actually helping you push forward if you have that visual board on the wall or drawing it out in stick figures, because not everybody's an artist, Max. We can't paint.
No. Well, there's a bunch of stuff I can't do. But it's, really scripts are not generally meant to be read. They're meant to be, they're like roadmaps. I will tell. I remember one time, and I won't mention names or anything like that, but I remember one time she and I got cast in a play. It was this original script, and you know which one I'm talking about. It read. So the first rehearsal we had, we're all just sitting around in chairs reading the script, and I was like, this reads so beautifully. And then we went to perform it, and it's like, it's a train wreck. It was horrible. Sitting and reading it, we could see all of the, it drew all these beautiful mental images and all that. Like, this is such a good piece of writing. And as a piece of writing, it was very good. As a performance piece, it sucked.
Oh my!
And we didn't know that until opening night, or just and we're kind of like rehearsing this thing, and it's like, why is this stupid thing not gelling here? It's like, and it was, it was a pretty painful experience. Actually, it's just, but just the first night we're sitting there reading this going, this is beautiful. This is a beautiful script. This is a wonderful piece of literature.
was it the setup? Was it what was the production that made it in your opinion, stuck so bad after all the hustling and all the hard work?
I think
Was it the way that they did the setup, the production? Was it not the way that you envisioned it?
I think when you're talking about novels, it was the action lines were very well written and poetic, but the action lines you're not reading, you're doing.
Yeah.
So I think that had, and then when you weren't really involved in the action lines, the dialogue just didn't translate very well. And the interaction between the characters, the things that the characters are saying to one another just felt very disjointed because you didn't have the literary convention of the action, as you know, like you said with a novel. Because I write novels too, and it's fun for me to sit there and go, okay, I don't have to describe the character, what they're feeling inside. It's like interior lecture hall day. Abby stands at the podium. She's a little nervous. She looks down at her notes, takes a breath, looks at the audience, and starts. Whereas if it were a novel, I'd have to explain Abby's having self-doubts. She just had a fight with her boyfriend, so her insides are like jelly. She's not sure that she's going to be able to get it out. She takes that breath, looks around, sees the disapproving glare of her professor. So then you have all that, but when you're just doing it, it's really up to the actor and how the actor looks.
To bring the character out, to bring the character in full stance. Yeah.
I think to answer your question, it was just it was a beautiful piece of writing, but it was put into the wrong context. It was just it was a good piece. It was just in the wrong environment.
So what would you suggest for writers to do if they're getting all this great feedback and it's ready for production and it's ready to get auditions in, like, throw it out on Backstage or Actors Access or, Casting Network. I'm ready to start getting people to come and do these reads and these table reads and start hiring people. What would you suggest as a writer, as a script writer, to do before, even though you got all this great feedback or even some criticism or whatnot, but all this great because it's a beautiful writing? What would I do as a script writer or the producer of this piece to make it stand out even more and not be a train wreck?
Okay, first of all, 85% of directing is casting.
Okay.
You've got to have the right people in the right roles. That's number one.
Okay.
And beyond that, you can be the most brilliant director in the world, but if you've miscast somebody, it's just, I heard it once being like, it
would be like the old soap operas back in the days with the fake acting.
Well, yeah, but it's kind of like, I've heard it described as a part for an actor is like a suit of clothes. And it's either tailored to your body or it's not.
Okay.
And I mean, I can tell you, just as an actor, I mean, I was miscast and stuff. It doesn't make any difference how much talent I have. It doesn't make any difference what kind of, production I'm working on. Like, if I'm not in a role that just doesn't suit me, I mean, no actor can play everything.
Yeah, that's true.
It's, and really, so much of acting, being on camera, on stage, or whatever, it's really about the company that you keep. It's a collaborative effort, and you've got to have the right people in the right place. It's like in any job, if you put somebody in a job that they're just not suited for, I don't care how smart they are. They're not going to do as good of a job as they possibly could be.
Or you take so much extra time focused on trying to get that person right that everybody else kind of falls.
There's that. There's that. But I mean, just as far as all I can tell you is so much of it is trial and error. You got to do the best you can to get the right people in the right parts and the right jobs. But beyond that, I mean, there's just get up and do it. And one thing I will tell you is just because where she and I met, it was the Florida International University Summer Playwrights Festival. Yeah, we met there, and there were people who had some scripts, and it was like first time writers, and they're putting the stuff out there. And, over the course of the summer, it was a really cool thing to take some of these scripts and just take them from, meet people where they are, and then, work on and see, this part works, this part doesn't, if you switch, this part to here, and, kind of get the sequence that, and we sort of did that experimentation. It just worked. It was this collaborative thing. And then at the end of it all, there'd be a Q&A with the playwright. And you were in a couple of shows. I was only in one, and with you and I. And I mean, after it was over, I remember this question and answer session. And this was in like a theater of like probably 200-300 people. And our playwright is up there. It's his first time, and he did not handle it well. He just people were supposed to say this is the most brilliant piece of writing in the history of writing. Oh my Lord, we're so not worthy to, look upon your script. And he started getting some criticism, which I knew he was going to. But I mean, he just, all I can tell you is beyond casting it, just start putting the stuff out there, see what you see, do the best you can with it. And then Tennessee Williams once said, the hardest part of writing is letting go of your little darlings. And and you just put it up there, you see what you see, you learn what you learn, go on to the next thing. I think it was either Prokofiev or Shostakovich. I'm not sure which one, but there's a story. He had just debuted a symphony, and somebody came up to him and said something like, that was really good, but it would have been better if you put this part of the symphony here rather than there. And his response was something to the effect of, I will keep that in mind for my next work, but I'm not changing this. Because I remember being in a play one time. It was this old piece of absurdist theater called King Ubu. That the writer had sort of like gotten the original script and done a bunch of stuff to it. And it was a very experimental production, but we would have these Q&A sessions afterward, and somebody would make a comment about this part, seemed like it would have been better or whatever. And the guy would change it every time. And we would come into a different script. It literally just about every performance, and there just comes a point of like, just let it be what it is, and then take it.
You're not going to be able to please everybody. Not everybody is going to like this.
Oh no, and I think people have to keep in mind in general, when it comes to acting, you're going to get a lot of rejection. You're going to get a lot of criticism, and that is something. It just comes with the territory, and being, that when you're acting, you do it for a while, you start putting yourself into it and your own personal experiences, your own personal, colorings and flavorings and opinions and experiences, and you start adding those into your character. Then somebody comes back and criticizes. It can feel like you're being personally attacked, and whether you're being personally attacked or not, you need to get over that, because this is how we learn. It's you will learn more from the failures.
And the way that we say in the government sector, I mean, even in the Army, we would say be like fluid, right? Because things are going to change. You have to be willing. In FEMA, we say FEMA flexible, right? What would be the thing in acting? What would be the little statement to say for actors, especially not having thin skin?
Bruce Lee, be water, my friend.
Be water.
Be water.
And accept the yes and build on what people are giving you. Because, you are going to get that criticism. When we first started looking at doing monologues for this, I had written a play way back when called Blue Lights and Balcony Dancing. It was a one-woman show and had all these monologues. I was super excited. I'm like, I'm going to dust this off, and we'll have all these monologues that we can use. And
I think you were like 24 when you were
and then Kelley, decades later, looking at this, went, oh my. Oh, honey. Oh, bless your heart. No, I think out of this whole thing, I can use maybe 4 monologues. And the rest of them were, hey, nice try. This was part of my writing journey. But it really wasn't meant to be performed or seen. It was meant to be that stepping stone. And that's what I tell people, all the time.
How we learn.
this is how we learn. And so, as far as like, a writer goes, if you can find a really good critique group, and there's a lot of writers groups like Atlanta Writers Club here in Atlanta, they've got writers groups all over the country that do critique groups. And what's nice about critique groups, I mean, you can submit your script to a film festival. The film festival will offer notes, and it's usually about $150 to $200 to, give you 3 or 4 pages of notes. That's great. But when you're doing a critique group, what's nice about that is it's reciprocal. So not only are you submitting things for your critique group to look at that are yours, but you're looking at other people's work, and then you're critiquing theirs. So what ends up happening is you're reading other people's things. You're thinking about how would I critique to tell them to get better. And in the process, you're learning how to critique your work better.
Yeah.
And help with that. And a lot of times those critique groups, they're free now, because your work is, you may have, anywhere from 6 to 12 people in the group, and you might be meeting every week, every other week. So you're going to have to read 2 or 3 submissions. So you may submit yours, and then there may be 2 others that you've got to read and critique. But again, what it does is it teaches you how to think critically about other people's work and about your work, and then how to phrase that criticism so it's constructive and not destructive.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll just say, I remember way back a million years ago, I was working with this one teacher in what it was called the payback program. It was for like gifted high school art students. And I wound up helping with this production of As You Like It. Cute little Shakespeare thing, and it was cut down specifically for high school students to perform this and everything like that. And the woman I was working with, she taught in the school system for like over 50 years. She had won Teacher of the Year. She had all these accolades and stuff. And she started, and I got in there, and I really wanted to work with her. And she was very much of the, I like this bunch of students, and I really don't like that bunch of students. And it was just this arbitrary animosity, and like these are the favorites, and I don't care if this group over here gets up and walks on water. I don't like that. And it was just, and I just, there's some people, she would get these students up there, and she would give them the most beautiful, eloquent notes, and then somebody from the dark side of the classroom comes over, as far as she was concerned. And I mean, it did not make a bloody difference in the world what any of these kids, what came out of their mouths. It was just this abusive, browbeating knockdown. It's like this. Look at this lady going, can you say one positive thing about it? It's like, no, you can't, apparently. And it's like, that's, and because I've run into acting teachers over the years who, I mean, I don't know who pissed in their cornflakes before they came into class today, but holy God, can you dial it down with a notch with the animosity and the attitude and the prima donna bullshit?
Yeah.
I mean, it's horrible, because you get these people, especially young kids. Well, I mean, really anybody, but you get them up there and they start acting, and eventually there's a vulnerability that comes with acting.
Yes.
I mean, Anthony Hopkins has said, there is strength in vulnerability, which is kind of a conundrum, but that's very true. But when you're up there dealing with these young people, or people very new to acting, and they're starting to make themselves vulnerable, and they're not necessarily aware of the fact they're making themselves vulnerable, and you start coming out with this commentary that's like, this self-aggrandizement, and look at me, and I'm the acting teacher. It's like, well, fuck you. You're a human being.
You're right within the language of the HERshyt show.
But seriously, I mean, I've seen some people get up, and they get these people, and they get these actors up on stage, and they destroy them for no other reason, because they can.
Yeah.
It's like Mahatma Gandhi said, one of the horrible things about human nature is that people have a tendency to want to put other people down, so it makes them appear bigger, rather than them concentrating themselves being working on themselves to be a better version of themselves. We got to insult people.
People that are like that, I seriously, like, in my mind, people that are like that, if they were put in that position to where they had to act or had to jump in front of a camera, they wouldn't be shit. because people they stand on their accolades and what they used to be, and I'm a teacher or whatnot. But if you don't, like you said, the vulnerability, we as starting off actors or starting off script writers or novel writers or whatever starting off we're doing in the artistic world, there's billions of people on this earth. We're not going to be able to please every single person. So I do feel if you are throwing yourself out there and you have look, I was blessed to have you as a teacher, so I'm good. But if that individual is just shitting on everybody that they dislike for whatever reason, and they're picking their favorites for whatever reason, if they were the type that had to get thrown in front of a camera, like, here's your monologue and go, they would probably be, like, where do I go? What do I do?
I actually, when I was in school, when I was in college, I'll just briefly tell us, I basically never got cast in the main stage. I was always in like the theater laboratory. I never got on main stage. And part of the requirement of the school was you have to audition. So, okay, I never got cast in any of this stuff, but there was this one time, and there was a bunch of stuff they did that, quite frankly, I wasn't really interested in it. I was more interested in like the experimental and the, like the classical and like, Samuel Beckett, and that stuff really interested me more so than, another
contemporary stuff.
10 millionth production of Streetcar Named Desire done by a bunch of college students. I mean, I just wasn't really interested. But I remember me and this friend of mine, we auditioned for True West by Sam Shepard. And at the time we blew the roof off of the audition. And I remember, leaving there going, we were great. And my friend was like, we're not going to get it. They're going to cast the exact same people every time. And the exact same people were getting up in these auditions, and they were slogging through it, and they were phoning in the performance, and they were doing half-assed stuff because they knew they were going to get cast no matter what. Whether they, were suited for it, or they earned it or not. And lo and behold, came in the next day, the exact same people got cast. And I was like, I went up to this professor, and I'm like, in so many words, I went, what the hell?
Exactly.
Dude, I mean, come on, seriously. But he said something to me. It was kind of like, well, casting a play is like dialing a phone. If you don't have the actors are like the numbers, and if you don't have the right numbers in the right order, then you're not going to call the right number, and you're not going, and your production isn't going to turn out right. And it's like, dude, I've been auditioning for 2 years. I'm not getting cast in one thing. That must mean I'm not right for any of this. And if that's the case, why don't you just grow a set of fucking balls and tell me I need to go do something else?
Exactly.
And,
don't let me go around.
And he looked at me like, So then about a year later, he actually got cast in something. It was this one-man show. And he was a black man who had grown up in a part of Miami called Overtown, which was rough. Let's just say it was the hood. Yeah, it was rough. And some rich white woman who had never been there wrote a play about Overtown, knowing jack shit about the experience of growing up as a young black man in this. She was telling him what it's like to be a black man in America. It's like, bitch, fuck you. Seriously. So I went to see the show, and this was in like one of these like experimental theaters, maybe about 70, 80 seats. I was sitting like right in the front row, and I watched my teacher get up there for about 90 minutes and just flop around on the floor. And it was painful. It was so painful to watch him. And I walked up to him afterwards, and I'm saying, hey, good job. And he's like, no, it wasn't. And he's like,
I was about to say, in his defense, it was an old rich white lady that tried to tell him how to be black in Overtown. So
exactly.
He tried to create a character that he wasn't.
But basically he said, but he was like, for 20 years, I've been sitting at the college in my ivory tower telling people how to do, and I had to get out and do this. And he was like, he just told me, he's like, basically, he just got run over. It was such a miserable experience for him. And he knew the show wasn't good. And it's him alone on stage for 90 minutes, knowing that this stuff sucks. but you said, you guys, people like you get out there, you put yourself out there, you go through the rejection, you go through the stupid criticism, you go through all that, you put yourselves out there and you go through it. I haven't done that. And it was like, basically, I have respect for you for what you do now. I was like, wow.
The universe sat him down for a second. Like, listen, this is what everybody else that you've been, portraying or doing as a professor. So the universe had a way of giving him a taste of his own money at that point.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have done the production, me personally, especially if it's all against my character, because, and just to pretty much, we're gonna go down the line. This is what I've gathered, right, from the interview. Y'all are amazing, first and foremost. creativeactorslab.com. You can find Kelley and Max. They are both teachers. They also do script plays. They will give you honest feedback, but not in a derogatory manner. I know that from experience, from being a student. And I've seen what Brandon has clinged to y'all like a magnet. So I know for a fact. But so definitely don't have thin skin. Be like fluid.
Oh God, no.
And Kelley, do you have any last words when it comes down to acting?
And when you do come out to our table reads and we get a pilot script from a show, and it might be the first draft, you're going to see how very different that first draft of that play was to the shooting draft. And we are talking very famous writers, people like Michael Schur on The Office, and Greg Daniels, and, people that write on Veep and things like that, White Lotus. So what I would say to writers, exactly. And so those things change, and that's all okay. People are going to give you feedback. And just as teachers, we try to build a strong foundation with people, and you can't do that by trying to shatter their confidence right out of the gate. That's not, excuse me. Excuse me. By shattering their confidence right out the gate, that is not going to give the results that you want. So, we want to build you up, because there will be people who will knock you down.
Oh, yeah.
And if you don't have that resilience right from the beginning, you're going to just take that and go, okay, I guess I shouldn't do that. Everybody's opinions are like buttholes. Everybody's got one. So, that's what I would say is I get told no a lot when I go out and audition. That's okay. I got a chance to try something new. I learned some new lines and I gave it a shot, and they may have already had somebody in mind, and that's why I didn't get cast. Okay. And I think you've got to go in. That's probably my best advice for an actor and a writer is there's any number of reasons why you're going to be told no, but don't let it dampen your passion, even if you're creating something that's just for you. Because there's other avenues. Like, recently we did one of Bell Rings. If I had to, as a podcast, if I'd had to film that would have cost me a lot of money. But the fact that I could create this piece with sound effects and other actors and things like that, and we were doing it very similar to what you're doing on now, is Zoom, and we got it together as radio theater. So, what I would say is there's always ways to produce things, but get other eyes on it, get feedback. And if it's brutal feedback, then chances are they're not taking your best interest into heart. They're just being brutal because they can. And don't let that tear you down. Just keep on working to get better.
Yes, ma'am. And I thank you so much for coming on the HERshyt show.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
No, thank you so much for having me.
And you know what? You were so pivotal in us starting our own podcast because you directed us to the resources.
Yeah.
So we appreciate you so much in that direction, because I know I can drop my podcast and it's through Buzzsprout and it goes on all the different, we dropped one this morning and it was there at 8:00.
Yes, ma'am. And y'all had me on there while I was away doing my
exactly
my main job.
So if you go on our podcast, if you scroll down, you will see Hersh and you can listen to that interview as well. She was great.
Check them all out, and also check out Max and Kelley. Both of them have their separate pages, but they also have the Creative Actors Lab on Instagram and Facebook, and their individual pages on Instagram and Facebook, and they're doing nothing but expansion. But if you really want to get into script writing or table reading or improv or any type of acting or honing in on theater and screen, then you need to definitely reach out to them. But until next time, this is the HERshyt Show.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Be sure to log on to youtube.com and subscribe to the HERshyt Show at TheRershytshow.